Hey, well, welcome to the show, Marcus Wing. We are glad to have you.
Thank you for
I'm,
having me.
yeah, this will be probably, in my opinion, one of our most maybe Corona heavy centered conversations we've had on the podcast because you are in a space that has been affected probably more than any other space, and that's event production.
Yeah, I would say we were the first one to kind of go out, and I think we're one of the last, um, industries that will come back.
Yeah, well, and it'll be interesting to see if there's any sort of dipping your toes in the water, taking them back out, and starting that process. And man, dealing with unpredictability in that sense, like kudos to you, because that would be really hard.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about running a business, you think you could make a few bad decisions, maybe make some bad deals, and your business could be affected or even go away. And in this case, it was like one day to the next. I think it was like September 16th. In 2 days, I lost 98% of my business. People calling, canceling. I remember I was at the gym. It was 9:30, and I got my first call, saying, "Hey, Marcus, we're really sorry. I was supposed to go to Vegas for a 2-day event. We're really sorry, but we have to cancel. We know this hurts you. We don't want to do it, but we have no option." And I thought, oh, well, I wonder about this company, and I wonder about this company, and
And
it
then
was
they
just like
started rolling in.
dominoes falling over one
Oh,
after another, calling, canceling. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and so I tried to laugh, But I mean, business was just gone overnight. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't make any bad decisions. I can't say that I could see it coming. It's just gone.
yeah. Well, with that, let's actually take a step back and have you describe your path as an entrepreneur and what got you to establish your current business, because you are making some pivots right now because of that. And I'd like to give people
Sure.
a good foundation.
Cool. So from a young age, I realized that I really didn't want to work for anybody, and that I had some really good examples of people that I wanted to kind of like model my lifestyle after. And that was being at home a lot with my family, being in all my kids' memories. And so my goal is always to build a business where I could accomplish that. I guess I'm probably a little bit different than most people, where I'm not chasing money. I'm chasing a lifestyle. I'm not out to make millions and millions of dollars, because I don't want to dedicate the time that it would take for that. But I want to live comfortably. I wanted to have I want to be in a position where we can do whatever we want to do, but also not dedicate all my life to working. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a lot more to life than that. So
Yeah.
I started a brand at a really young age. I had a partner, a good friend, and in the process of starting this brand, we started doing a lot of events, and we started doing promotional events to push our brand. And so I got into that. I didn't necessarily work out with the brand. We kind of separated ways. I was 23. I was 6 weeks out from getting married, and so I had to figure something out. No college education. I went to college for about 6 weeks and realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I had to come up with something. And I'm like, man, we've done really good events. We've been very successful at getting people to different events. And so I said, well, I'm going to keep doing that. So I noticed there was this non-alcoholic, non-smoking nightclub down in downtown Salt Lake. They had a really good Thursday night, couple thousand people a night. They had a really good Saturday night. They had a couple thousand people a night coming. And Fridays, they were getting like 50 people. So I went to the owner and was like, look, you're probably losing money on Friday nights. He's like, yeah, I just can't get any traction. And I said, well, what would it be worth it to you if I could get people here? And he says, I will give you half of the door money. So I was like, great. So I started out once a month putting on an event at the club. Immediate success. We did really well. I did, pretty good for 23. And then so he said, well, hey, you're doing one a month. You want to do two a month? I said, yeah, I'd love to do two. So I started doing 2 events a month. And then he incorporated a high school night where he would do these high school parties for high school kids, right? So he said, do you want to do those? And I said, yeah. So I started doing more and more nights, and I was becoming really successful. One thing that I noticed was the entertainment. I would hire DJs, and that was always like my biggest complaint. People were like, yo, your party's fun, but DJs are terrible. And I tried, and I spent a lot of money trying to get good entertainment. And what I realized was I couldn't afford to get good entertainment. And even when I did pay money, the entertainment necessarily wasn't good. So I decided to become a DJ and to become the entertainment. If my business was going to be successful, I had to have good entertainment. So I shadowed a DJ for, I don't know, 6 months. I'd carry in his turntables into the club. I'd set it up for him. If he wanted a drink, I'd go get him a drink. And in return, he taught me how to actually DJ. Mixing. This is pre like a lot of the softwares that make it pretty easy nowadays. This was
Yeah.
mixing vinyl and CD, and so I learned like the fundamentals, you know, before like it became a lot easier. But the biggest thing was that I learned how to control a crowd. I learned how to like keep the energy at these events, and so not being cocky, I did a good job at DJing. I became a good DJ, and from that, people would come to my events at the studio, and then they would go off to college and they'd be like, look, I'm in a leadership position at Utah State. We have this event. Like, can you do mobile events? And I didn't, but I was like, yes, absolutely. Count
Isn't
me
that
in,
funny when those opportunities come?
you know,
Yeah, yeah, of course I do that.
I've done that. I've done that 100 times. So I rented
True
gear
entrepreneur
and
right there.
yeah. And I don't know, man, I'm a little, I don't know if entrepreneur is the right word. I'm kind of like a rat that when the water rises, you know, I scurry along and make it to higher ground until, you know, to avoid drowning. But, you know, things would pop up like that. And eventually I'm like, well, I'm doing a lot of these events. Maybe I should, you know, buy some gear. So I bought staging, I bought, you know, sound, I bought lighting. And I just kind of, anytime I would make money, I'd reinvest in the company and I would buy a bunch of gear until it came to the point where I didn't want to be a promoter anymore. It's a hard job convincing college, high school kids to come to these events. I'm getting older. I'm having kids. And so I'm like, and it's also a little bit stressful. You know, there's some days you make a lot of money and then there's some days where it snows and, you know, the weather dictates that people can't get anywhere and you're doing an event and you've already paid for it and you've already rented the building and you've already put all the money into promotion and nobody shows up. So I started to do more paid events where, you know, I would show up and people would pay me for my talents and for my gear, you know, and started doing that a bunch. And that became kind of our main business was event production. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten other interests. So like, I think that corporate events are really cool. There's a lot of like details that go into them, the video
Yes.
side of things.
Uh-huh.
The lighting is super particular and it kind of like makes me excited to kind of map all that stuff out and kind of see it come together. So before Corona, that was kind of the direction that we were heading was we were doing a lot of event production, whether it be concerts, which we've done Macklemore, we've done Kid Ink, we've done American Authors, we've done Sean Kingston, we've done some pretty big concerts. And then we've also done things, you know, like the corporate presentation type stuff where we set up for banquets and award ceremonies and that sort of thing. And I kind of get satisfaction out of all that stuff. I don't love one or the other, but I really like producing events. I like going to a space that shouldn't even be a venue and, you know, you completely transform it and turn it into an event space. And then by the end of the day, it's completely gone and back to what it was, you know?
Yeah.
So that's before coronavirus. That's kind of like in a nutshell, where I started and where I ended up.
So with that, like, did you ever imagine that when you started, you pivoted from that brand that you were building with your friend
Mm-hmm.
into events? Did you ever imagine that it could evolve into what it became?
See, a lot of people have like these plans, you
Yeah.
know, and they've got like, you know, a 10-year plan or they've got a goal of where they wanted to go. And I feel like naturally things would shift and I would see it, you know, like take for instance, okay, so when I was doing events, not only was I not enjoying them as much, people were seeing, hey, this guy's being successful doing events. So what did they do? They would copy my, Facebook event information almost word for word. They would throw a party with probably, less than a quarter of what I would put into it production wise. People would show up and be like, this sucks. And then they would lump me into that. And so my
Mm.
numbers were kind of going down, not only because of these other events, but it was becoming so saturated, right? So I'm like, I've got to make a change. Like if I just keep riding this party wave, like it's going to go away and I'm not going to have a business. So naturally I saw these other opportunities and I just kind of shifted with it. So it wasn't like I had planned it and been like, oh, I want to do this. It's
Right,
just
right.
like, okay, an opportunity slid in and that was kind of the next move.
Yeah,
And
well,
that's happened a few times.
it just goes to show that, like, A, we're not very good at predicting the future.
No.
And B, the flexibility and adaptability you need as an entrepreneur, because there will always be things that are inserting themselves into the market, whether it be an influx of wannabe event producers or a
Right.
worldwide pandemic. And
Right.
being nimble and on your toes so that you can still harness the creativity that is entrepreneurship and take the bones of what you have and turn it into its next evolution.
Yeah. If you would have, I mean, people were calling me before like the coronavirus shut everything down. And they were like, dude, like, are you nervous? I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, man, this could really hurt you. Like this is a big deal. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, man, this is going to blow over. Everything's going to be fine. I even had, and then, it got closer and I started to worry. So I started to call some of my companies that I do the work for. I'm like, look, should I be nervous? And they're like, no, Marcus, this is going to pass. No big deal. Right. And then everything shut down. So if you would have asked me, 2 or 3 weeks before Corona, if this would ever happen, and I mean, I went from I've lost probably $500,000 in revenue, and if you would have asked me if that would ever happen, I would have told you were crazy. So I have a different outlook now. I think differently. You never know, and you can't predict the future, and so I've had to make a couple changes and in order to keep things afloat. But yeah, you can't, and you got to be able to kind of shift with whatever comes.
Yeah, so how have you done that? Just, I mean, you said in 2 days you lost 98% of your business,
Yeah.
$500,000. You started this podcast, right? In the time?
Yeah, so I actually was involved in a podcast before that. A buddy of mine has a show on the Discovery Channel called The Diesel Brothers. My best friend, Dave Sparks, is on that show, and he has an Instagram following of like 3 million followers. And he said, hey, I want to start a podcast. And he sent me a link of a bunch of stuff that he wanted to use audio-wise for his podcast, and
Like
it was all
equipment?
junk. Yeah, yeah. So like really low-grade microphones, like just this mixer that Amazon packages, like, oh, I'll become an instant podcaster. And I'm like, Dave, dude, if you're gonna do this, like, let's do it right. Let me look into audio side and let's make sure that we're recording well and we have the right tools to make it professional, rather than just getting one of these Amazon bundles and making it work. And so I bought really nice microphones, really nice recording software, editing. I at this point, it was just a passion. I think we did on that podcast about 26 episodes, and we did about 3 million listens in those 26 episodes.
Wow.
So it was successful. He's a really busy guy. He films a TV show. He runs like, I don't know, 6 different businesses that are all really high level. And so it hasn't been a priority for him to do the podcast lately. And so we've kind of are on a little break, but I learned a lot of how to manage a podcast, how to, edit a podcast, how to master it audio wise for, to put it on these different platforms. And so
Yeah.
when Corona hit, the next day I'm like, okay, what is my easiest path right now? Or what opportunities do I have to make money? Not only that, I had an event series that I do a lot of events for, probably about 50 a year. And they came to me and like, Marcus, you're doing our stage and sound and lighting for these events. Would you be interested in doing tables, chairs, and tents for all these events too? So I invested a pretty good sum of money buying all this gear. And 2 days before we were supposed to do the first event in Vegas, they had to cancel. And they've canceled all their events. So all the money that I invested in that end, expecting to get a return out of, uh, is not there. And I couldn't get refunded on all the stuff I bought. So I was in a position where a lot of my money that I had been saving through the winter, because, our event business thrives in the summer. I spent getting ready for these events.
Yeah.
Events cancel, can't get my money back. So I'm in a position where I have to make money. And so I said, what is my easiest path to being successful? What can I start now that will make money now?
Yeah.
And so I said, well, the podcasting thing has been a passion, but I'm pretty sure that I could turn it into a business. And so the space that we're in right now and that I'm recording from is a 1-car garage on the end of my house. And it was filled with junk, stuff that I hadn't seen in years. And I told my wife, I'm like, look, if I haven't touched anything in here in the past year, I'm loading it up and I'm taking it to the dump. Because you couldn't even go to like thrift stores and donate it at this
That's
point
right. That's right.
because of COVID. So I filled up a truck. I emptied the space. I took it to the dump. I sold a Harley, got enough cash to completely soundproof the room. We built it out. It's built designed for podcasting. There's sound dampening panels we have on the walls. It has its own cooling system. I mean, I spent all my money and designed this room for that purpose because I believed it was going to make me money. I probably shouldn't have spent money, but I did, kind of betting that it would be successful. So since then, we've got a few clients that we're now working for that we completely manage their podcast side of things. They're businesses that are big enough that they don't want to become podcasters themselves. Their time is more valuable than learning how to edit and do it all themselves. And they don't necessarily have social media management teams. And so we make it easy for them. We have a studio. They can come sit down. They pull the mic in front of their face and we're recording. Or I do it remotely. Like, so for some other companies, they have conference rooms. I'll go set up microphones and everything we need. I'll send them a text. They'll walk down from their office. We'll record. And then I handle everything else. So the next day they wake up, there's a podcast. And so what was a passion and what, was just kind of a fun thing to do with my buddies is now turned into my primary source of income.
How does that make you feel? That was like a huge shift, but like so creative on your end. I'm just, I wonder if I could have responded with such agility. I'm impressed.
Well, here's the thing. It's not something that I wanted to do. It's out of necessity.
Right.
Uh, I'm in a position where, I am self-employed and have been for the past, I don't know, 16 years, right? And so if I don't make money, bills don't get paid, right? I don't have a college education, so for me to go get a job that pays enough money to continue to sustain how we're living, I mean, it's basically impossible at this point. So there's no safety net. If I fall, it's not good, right? So for me, it wasn't a thing like, this is something that I want to do, or it was really the only option. If I
Yeah.
didn't create an opportunity, then my family would probably suffer. So I'm in a unique situation where it's like there's no other option. You just do it because that's what you have to do. Does that make any sense?
Oh, 100%. And I'm willing to bet that there are a lot of people in that same position right now because of COVID. Because have you heard the story about burning the boats?
Yeah. Yep.
It's a metaphor I feel like I hear in business all the time. But like, once you're onto one opportunity, burn the boats. Don't look back. Just move forward. But I feel like a lot of people's boats have been burned for them.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. I mean, my ship was burned with me kind of diving overboard, narrowly escaping doom. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
so, I mean, that skill is not one that I don't think everybody has, or maybe comes overnight. But people who are
right.
in similar situations, what advice do you have? Like, you'd been exposed to that kind of before in your life, so it wasn't like this new concept of, well, I've got to pivot, or I'm gonna do this, that, or the other. It was probably a bit more dramatic, for sure.
Right.
So people experiencing it for the first time, what would your advice be to them?
Number one, I would say to like keep a good mindset, whether you transfer or you move into something, right, and it goes really good or it goes really bad. I mean, whether you're happy or pissed about it, I mean, it doesn't really change like the facts, you know? So the one thing that I've tried to do during this whole thing is, people try to bait me into it all the time. They want me to complain. They want me to say, oh, this is so
Yes.
terrible, and man, poor me, and this and that. And even, I don't want to blast anybody, but people in my industry, there's groups of them out there on Facebook that's all they do is they just say, this and this, and they're waiting on government assistance. And I've realized that if I don't make something happen, nothing's going to happen, and there's nobody coming to save me. I'm not relying on any, government funding or anything else. Which, if you can, great. My business is in a position where we could. And so I think it's all an attitude. If you're pissed off and if you're, grinding your gears and you're constantly complaining about it, I don't think that it does any good. And so I think that if you just keep a positive outlook and, continue to try, I think that you're going to get a lot farther, look for solutions rather than complaining about the problems. But then also, I would also realize that, look, your worst case scenario, and this is something that I tell myself all the time, your worst case scenario is never really that bad, especially here in Utah. I
Say
mean, let's
that
let's be
again.
honest. Yeah, like we live in a very generous state. We live in a state where not only is there government assistance, there's family, and there's churches in our area that are not going to let anybody starve. So I realized, look, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to push as hard as I can, and if I fail, what's my worst case scenario? I'll probably have to move in with my parents or my in-laws, which sucks, right? But dude, you think about all the other problems that are going on in the world and everything else that people struggle with, pretty insignificant, right?
Yeah.
There's always probably going to be food on our table. If it gets to a situation where, I mean, worst comes to worst, I can't afford it, we're going to get assistance somewhere. You know what I mean? So rather than, worrying and having a bad attitude and just keeping that mindset of, well, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to do my best. And even if I fail, needs will still be met. So I know that that's like a real kind of like first world way to look at it. But really, even here in the country, if you get to a point where you need the help, there's all kinds of programs that can help. And so just keep a good attitude. Worst comes to worst, there's a lot of people that are going to be able to help you. Your worst case scenario is in our situation here in Utah, especially, is never that bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this isn't the most entrepreneurial specific comment, but people are good. People will come out of the woodworks, and they'll deliver if you really need it. Um, but as you're telling that story, it made me think of a book I read years ago by Grant Cardone, big
Mm-hmm.
sales personality, real estate guy. He's written quite a few sales books, but he wrote one that he published in 2010 called "If You're Not First, You're Last." All about the concept of what had happened in the 2008 recession. Of like, look,
Mm-hmm.
if you become the tortoise and you like hunker down in your shell and then think that like you can come back out after the economy's better or this, that, or the other, you're highly mistaken. Like, that is your time to dig in your heels, to get creative, to see what your next least friction path is to moving forward and to kill it. And
Yeah.
yeah.
No, so I used to believe that coronavirus would have no effect on my business and that it was, just something that people were getting excited about and that it would pass over and everything would be fine, right?
Hmm.
I've definitely changed my mentality, and I hope for the best and plan for the worst.
Yeah.
And so I'm building this new business and this podcasting management thing that may turn into content creation and a bunch of other things. Right? I'm planning as if this is it. Luckily for me, I own all of my equipment, and so I've got an acre and a half property in Highland. I have a shop built on the back. I'm not paying a warehouse. All my trucks and everything are paid for and they're here. So that business, luckily for me, can sit out back. And if it ever does come back, great. I'd love for it too, because I really do enjoy it. And I put a lot of money into it and I've spent a lot of time building it. But I am planning as if that is all relics of the past. Like, these giant audio speakers are, artifacts that are never going to be used again. And I'm building this business to kind of change with the times where if like, look, if people go absolutely bonkers and we're never do concerts or live events again, like I have something else sustainable that's going to continue to support our family regardless of the, current climate. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Again, it's just another like mental choice you've made to not even try and dig your boat up from the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
it, it's
Yep.
something that is tricky and hard. Um, but so with that, I'd love to hear, with COVID, with starting your own business, with pivoting that business model because of external factors. What takeaways would you have for entrepreneurs today looking to start a business, no matter what industry it is in?
I would say starting a business, number one for me, it's just no matter what stage you're at, whether you're just starting, whether you're successful, whatever point your business is at, is just keep a good attitude, and enjoy your life, whether you're absolutely broke or you're, rolling in the dough. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many people that feel like they almost have to punish themselves and be in this position where they
And
just
be
have
a
to grind,
martyr.
grind, grind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and almost it's just like, I can't enjoy until, I'm, driving this or I've made this much money and for me, man, I have 4 kids and I have a wife. And like I said, lifestyle is most important to me. And so whether we're in, the period of life where we're doing really well financially and we have these really fun activities and things that we do, right? Or we could travel and kind of pick up and go whenever we want to. Or if it's like right now when things are really tight and we're struggling to just kind of pay bills and get by and to, make it that way, it's like we find things to enjoy. Like Sunday, me and my family go for a hike every single week. We like to go to things that have like a water feature, so a waterfall or a river or a lake, and we hike to it and we spend time together and we enjoy. I think that so many people out there that are trying to start businesses and work for themselves think that they just have to always be working. And
Yeah.
I think that it's important to keep your mentality right and to keep your head right. And I can't do
Yes.
that if it's just work. So don't punish yourself and become this person that feels like, oh, I've got to build this business. And so I'm going to completely forget about all of the activities I like to do or the hobbies that I have, or I'm going to, skip my kids' soccer games and stuff like that. Like you can work smart and you can still be successful while enjoying your life.
Yeah.
So I'm a big lifestyle guy, and maybe that's wrong. There's people out there probably shouting it, their phones right now saying, no, you got to grind. And I'm like, look, I may walk out in front of my house after this, podcast, and I might get hit by a truck and my life's going to be over. And if that's the case, I want to look back and be happy and not say, well, I spent the last 10 years stressing and, trying to make money and build, and I absolutely hated my life. I
Yeah,
think that people, entrepreneurs especially, need to enjoy and remember to find happiness in every stage.
totally. You and I are very similar in that way. I remember saying early on in my career, like, work is not my lifestyle.
No.
I do believe that um, two things. One, that a balanced life, like, I don't know that there is any such thing as work life balance. It's just life.
Yeah.
Like, and
Hmm.
there isn't a work Casey and a home Casey. I'm just Casey, So, like, but there is a balance where you do need to make sure to make time for certain things, sleep being one of them, hobbies, family, all of that. But two, knowing that there are certain stages in your life, your career uh, span of being a business owner, where it fluctuates, and you might spend a bit more time one week than you do the next week, um, and that you can have that balance and that lifestyle, even though sometimes that happens. And that's where you kind of have, when on your slower week, you take advantage of that. Or I don't know, there's your Caseyism for the day.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people sometimes just work to say that they're working. I'm all about, look, if I've got something to do, I get in and I get it done and I grind it out and I'm finished. I
Yes.
don't stay longer to say, oh, I had a 20-hour day today, but really I was working 5 of those hours, and the other, 15, I just made it look like I was doing this. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like I just optimize the time that I have and try to get it done in an effective manner. And we don't have to always be working, you know?
it's not a badge of honor like it was in the 90s. We've
No.
moved past that.
Yep.
Hopefully. Anyway, well, thanks again, Marcus. It's good to have you on the show.
Welcome. Yeah. Thank you so much.